My name is Alberic, and I'm part of the Historic Preservation Planning Laboratory class. And this class is made up of historic preservation seniors, and the purpose of this class is to tackle different urban planning issues and each year. And this year is a redesign of the Kenmore Park Playground in Fredericksburg. This class mimics the studio process that can be found at architecture school as well. And the point of the class is to bring everything we have learned from previous classes, but there's no better way to learn than trying a professional process of planning. Here we see the team. There's 9 students. This course is run differently than other courses because it's all a team-based effort where we all turn in one large project at the end, which is this presentation plus a report. The work was divided out evenly among the students, with each student doing their strengths. So some students focused on renderings and mapping, some students focused on the writing, and some focused on the presentation. And next is Elizabeth.
In order to complete the redesign of Kenmore Park, the class set out to address the issues currently facing the park. First, the class did archival research on the history of playgrounds along with the theory of play. The class then went out into the field, the playgrounds on Kenmore Park, to evaluate the current condition of the playground equipment, to get acquainted with the topography the class will be working with, and to take field measurements. Using the field measurements, the class designed a model to scale of the redesigned playground. The class then created a questionnaire for caregivers and their children to get a sense of the public's opinion of playgrounds, which we will delve into later on. Finally, the class went back into the field and interviewed caregivers and children, as well as took action shots with permission from the caregivers. Kenmore Park is located along Kenmore Avenue and Ball Street, adjacent to the Lower College Heights neighborhoods. The park is within walking distance from the downtown area and is accessible from the Rappahannock, Virginia Canal Trail. The area of the park, as can be seen outlined in green on the map, was originally part of the Fielding and Betty Lewis plantation. While it was dedicated as Memorial Park in 1964 to honor veterans of past wars, the park is commonly referred to as Kenmore Park. The park is fairly flat besides the hill that leads up to Mary Washington's obelisk and Meditation Rock, where children like to run up and climb. Also, the park includes the following resources: tennis courts, pickleball courts, 2 playgrounds, a basketball hoop, and open fields. Some development is happening in the park to this day, but it has languished a bit. Next, Rebecca will discuss about the history of playgrounds.
Early on in the semester, we started research into the history of playgrounds in the United States. What we found was that playgrounds initially appeared in the U.S. in the late 19th century in the form of German sand gardens. Sand gardens consisted of sand pits and tall metal climbing apparatuses known as gymnasiums. Play activities would often be coordinated and supervised by paid professionals. Over time, more equipment like swings and slides were also added. The 1930s and 40s saw the development of the adventure playground, otherwise known as the junk playground. The adventure playground is an economically accessible type of playground where children can play with scrap construction materials like bricks, wood, and rope, encouraging them to use their imaginations. The post-war years were full of creativity and investment in playground design, mainly leading to the development of novelty playgrounds which have a theme, incorporating science fiction or fantasy elements like rocket ships and castles. In the 1970s, playgrounds started taking the shape that we know today. Americans became increasingly concerned about the safety of playgrounds, and as a result, various organizations and government entities created guidelines pertaining to how playgrounds should be built. This led to mass-manufactured playgrounds, often made of plastic and inspired by the colorful design of McDonald's playgrounds. Oftentimes, imagination was and is sacrificed for safety. Today's playgrounds are most often destination or theme-based and focus on creating unique and creative experiences to spark children's imagination. Safety is still an issue dealt with in playground design, though children need to be able to take some risk in order to develop problem-solving skills and resilience. Inclusivity is also a greater issue in playground design today. Inclusive playgrounds go beyond the requirements of the ADA to challenge kids of different ages and ability levels, both physically and mentally. It is important for playgrounds to offer diverse sensory play and social experiences to help children learn and grow. In redesigning Kenmore Park, the class hoped to blend the creativity of historic playgrounds with modern play theory to provide children with a fun and engaging play space. Next, Megan will talk more about what we learned from our field survey at Kenmore Park.
So after we did our archival research, we needed to go out into the field at the playground as it currently stands to figure out how we wanted to design the playground. The major thing we had to contend with was the topography and the trees. As you can see in this picture, the hill at the back, which houses the Mary Washington Monument, is very, very large, and so we were unable to build there, which posed an issue. The other thing we had to work around was the trees, which we did not want to cut down for environmental reasons and for the issue of not having shade over the main play space. And so we had to map this area and figure out where everything was so we could create a more continuous play space, as the current space as it stands is not connected and is not connected by theme or like physically, no paths. So that brings us into the actual issues at Kenmore Park. There's a lack of shade on the older kids' side, which can be seen on the right, which during the summer is very difficult for the parents and for the children. And speaking of the parents, there is poor seating options, which there's no space for them to sit, and it's in the sun. There's ineffective signage, and there's, like I said, there's limited connectivity within the park, and these apparatuses are very, very old on top of that. They're from the 1980s, other than the one that was put in 2012 on the little kids space. And because of all the trees, there is poor drainage. So now Ben will be talking about the surveys we did.
After we identified the current conditions and the issues present at Kenmore Park, we ran a quick 5-minute long survey through the Qualtrics software that we distributed to friends and friends of friends around the country, focusing on those who have kids or go to playgrounds with kids regularly. We asked questions such as how far people are willing to travel to playgrounds, how long they stay at playgrounds, the age of the child that they go to playgrounds with, and what types of equipment both the child and the guardian liked and didn't like. And from that survey, we found a few interesting pieces of data. First, caregivers are okay with some risk. We found the majority are okay with their child coming back with bumps and bruises, however, they don't condone broken bones. They also said that some adventuring is okay, as long as it's on surfaces that are soft. We also found that features they preferred were shade, seating, bathrooms, and picnic tables. We then, after our survey, interviewed children and caregivers after getting consent. We found that the children are very easy to please, however, the caregivers are much harder to please, and appealing to them is crucial in which playground they choose to go to. Caregivers care a lot about proximity of seating to the playground so that they're able to watch their kids. They also care about the kids being able to play with other kids and the sociability or the social aspect of the playgrounds. And they care about being comfortable while there, so having things such as shade and nice seating. We found that the features they valued the most were seating, restrooms, shade, and the material of the playground surface, which is very important to them when choosing where to go. Based on the results of our survey and what we learned through our research, we began the design process, which John will talk about now.
For the design process, we created our equipment out of Lego, and we printed out a scale model of the area using SketchUp. The equipment itself was chosen individually based off of our survey results, which is how we ended up with equipment like swings, slides, and climbing apparatus. And they were then measured and built with the Lego so that we could move them around the map to take advantage of the space in a way that connects everything together naturally, unlike the park's current layout. And this process of shifting equipment around the map was done repeatedly throughout multiple class meetings until we finally found a layout that was just right in terms of making it feel natural and without disturbing the environment. And although it's not visible, the footprints of the trees are on the map, so we made sure to work around them, and we even created circular benches around trees to incorporate them into the seating. And there's a picture of that on the left. Something else we worked on was adding signage and better navigation. Right now, access to the park has no signage, and it's not obvious what the park is called or where you're going, so we tried to connect the playground to the park and the park to the neighborhood through paths created via Photoshop, and you can see one of those on the left. And a scavenger hunt was also created that encourages kids to move around and discover the park as they go in a way that's accessible to both older and younger kids. Now Zadie's going to talk about the redesign of the park.
This brings us to our redesign. Once we brought everything together through our iterative and collaborative process through using Lego until we were happy with everything, we put our design into GIS and Google SketchUp in order to make a digital 3D model and used Illustrator to create wayfinding renderings. The map of the park redesign is pictured above. You'll notice it connects a lot more, and if you recall the original drawing, what's right there now is half a path that basically ends in the middle of nowhere, and two playgrounds which don't relate to each other at all. One is entirely in the sun and one is entirely in the shade. We worked with the idea that you could almost jump from one apparatus to another in a sort of floor is lava concept to get to the different items. We kept the restroom where it is currently, but the paths and signage have been drastically improved. We also rearranged seating so that caregivers could have a 360-degree view of the children playing. We would also suggest to add more pour in place surfacing, which means you don't get splinters all over the place and also allows for safety when you want to jump around. Next, Jeremy will talk more about the signage.
Our plan for park signage is to have a double-sided board that warmly welcomes people to the park on one side and shows scavenger hunt items on the other. These signs are to be strategically placed in 2 to 3 different areas or entrances around the park. The icons for the scavenger hunt were chosen based roughly on some Fredericksburg themes, but are also generic icons that children will be able to tell apart. This is a perfect activity for children because the icons can be moved around, which keeps the longevity aspect of the game. These icons are going to be made with dense plastics that are both weather and waterproof, and the most likely choice for this would be high-density polyethylene. There is no clear entrance to the park along Kenmore Avenue, so the picture on the left is a rendering of what the entrance would look like with a brick path and some signage. Now Hannah is going to speak about the SketchUp model for the park.
Once all other aspects of the design were finished, we started building the model in SketchUp at 1:1 or life-size scale. Early on, the class decided on a theme that would pay homage to Fredericksburg and the natural elements in it. You saw Fredericksburg-related objects in the scavenger hunt, and now you'll see the natural influences in the apparatus. The apparatuses are primarily constructed from wood, and we also have benches and picnic tables made from wood, including circular benches which aren't pictured here that allow optimal viewing for caregivers. You'll also see different shades of green used for the slides and later on in the fly-through, the shade sails as well. These details help the apparatuses complement the existing landscape. As we begin, you can see the signs Jeremy discussed, including the scavenger hunt sign. Moving along, you'll see both the brick and the poured-in-place walkways to improve the park's connectivity and accessibility. You'll also see some apparatuses such as the zip line, the tower with slides, the rope bridge, and other elements. As the camera pans, you'll see more paths, including the mushroom steppers, to again connect differing elements of the park, as well as a little cabin that provides a hiding spot for children. You'll also see wooden picnic tables and benches to provide seating that also complement the natural theme. We also have our swings, and we chose these tire swings because they're more collaborative than normal ones. There's also this shade sail that can be put up seasonally to address the lack of shade. Wheelchair access splash pad is here. It takes advantage of having no shade in the area, and it is adjacent to the existing bathroom, so adding the plumbing won't destroy any of the trees in the park. Our report will be available in May if you'd like to learn more about our final project. It will have additional info, including pricing and more details about our iterative process. Thank you.